Hello and welcome to a very special video for the Sheffield Gothic YouTube channel, where we are thrilled to be delving into everyone's favourite cult TV show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and hosting an extra special video about Buffy and the Bible conference. I'm Mary, co-organiser of Sheffield Gothic, and today I am delighted to be joined by two fabulous special guests, Emma Nagouse and Lily Daniels, to talk about Buffy and the Bible. So, if you are new to our channel, be sure to check out our other videos and, of course, subscribe. We've recently launched our Conversations with Sheffield Gothic series, and in the latest episode, myself and my other partner in crime, Lauren Nixon, break down our top 3 favourite vampires. So if vampires are your thing, do check that out. You can also find us on Twitter at Sheffield Gothic. And we also have a website where you can find, among lots of other spooky things, our Buffy blog series. And you can find that at sheffieldgothic.home.blog. And as always, the links will be included in the video description somewhere below. So, with no more ado, let's get biblical. And as I mentioned, today I'm joined by 2 amazingly fabulous special guests. So first we have Emma Nagouse. Emma is a PhD candidate in the School of English at the University of Sheffield, where she researches rape culture in the Hebrew Bible, pop culture, and contemporary society. She's also a scriptwriter and chief nerd on smash hit BBC podcast You're Dead to Me, which you may have heard of, as well as a writer on BBC Radio 4's Homeschool History. And her favourite Buffy character at the moment is Oz.
It's Cordelia at the minute. It's changed from 10 minutes ago.
Of course. Two great choices. I approve. And we also have with us Lily Daniels. So Lily Daniels is an inclusive arts practitioner, making work around memory and using illustration and ceramics. She has a master's degree in inclusive arts practice from the University of Brighton and has done lots of collaborative work with academics, but she's really passionate about working with underrepresented communities. She is currently working as a participation and engagement officer with the Church's Conservation Trust, and her favourite Buffy character is Giles. And I have to say I approve of Giles as well. So yeah, welcome both of you. It's lovely to see you. Let's start at the beginning of the project. And how did the Buffy and the Bible conference come about? And why Buffy? And why the Bible?
We joked for quite a long time that some sort of Buffy and biblical event, some sort of biblical Buffy event would be like really fruitful, and hey, look at all these religious and biblical tropes and cliches and imagery that you see in Buffy over and over again. So for about a year, because me and Mary are really good at getting sidetracked from our primary research in terms of our thesis, whether it's writing about supernatural or any other range of things. So we were like, what about Buffy? And then after about a year of talking about all the ways in which that sort of event could work, and realizing that an event that specifically looked at the biblical and religious imagery and tropes and characters and themes in Buffy like hadn't really happened, and then the announcement of the reboot happened as well, in the sort of big anniversary of Buffy happened. We just thought, why don't we just do it? And then we did it. And and also I should say, is a really important piece of context, is when the Gothic Bible project launched at the University of Sheffield, there was a Gothic Bible conference, and Naomi Hetherington, who was one of the co-organisers of this conference, she did the keynote for that conference, which was on Buffy. So our research teams and institutions, we'd already started a bit of a tradition with looking at Buffy and in a sort of Gothic context with Naomi's keynote on Buffy. And I guess that's a really rambling way of saying that we had a lot of fans in the same place, and this is what happened.
I mean, yeah, I was thinking then when you mentioned getting sidetracked from your research. At least your research is about pop culture. Mine is about 18th and 19th century literature. So I don't really know how I've ended up with Supernatural and Buffy being parts of my tangential research, but here we are. But yeah, I think Naomi was definitely a big part of the inspiration. So I organised the Gothic Bible conference, and I was looking for a keynote, and here's someone who kind of was talking about Buffy, which is a show that I really love, and biblical sacrifice. So I thought, this sounds amazing, I need this. And then, yeah, like a few years later, you know, me and Emma are in the office and we're just joking about Buffy, and I think, like you say, like there's two things. One of it is the whole kind of, let's do this, and it's fun and it's jokey and we should do a conference. And then I think there was something that changed, and you were like, no, we should do this, and here we are. So I think we wouldn't be, I don't think the Buffy in the Bible conference would have happened without you, Emma. You were very much the kind of the push for it, and I think as well we also, you know, Naomi was also a big part of that as well, in laying that kind of that kernel that seed.
And then we got like a crack team together of researchers from all over who were really passionate. So we have Kell at the University, Kell Richards from the University of York, Ash Darrow, Holly Dann,
Dana Alex.
Dana, of course, Dana. I'm like, gosh, it's been a year. Yeah, so we ended up having like a whole gang of scoobs who were all really into it.
Yeah, so I guess my next question is, you know, where did the idea of recording the conference creatively come from? And I think, Lily, like, I think you can definitely speak to this, because I know that you and Emma have worked together collaboratively before Buffy.
Well, I know exactly where it started for me. So I remember I went to a conference. It wasn't really a conference, it was sort of the launch of a research project in Bristol that was about sexual violence and rape culture. And Lily, who was based in Brighton at the time, came with me. I travelled down from Sheffield, and we were sat together, and it was really great research, really difficult to listen to, because it was based on the outcome of a lot of interviews and very difficult stuff. And I was sitting next to Lily, and Lily started taking these visual notes, and I was just like, what is happening like on the page next to me? Because, you know, I'm used to people typing on their laptops and, you know, writing down every word the person has just said, which is fine, works for me. But seeing, like, there was cartoons being drawn next to me, there was ideas being translated into comics and like actual art happening next to me, and I was just completely enchanted by it. And I just thought it was just incredibly impressive in a way that my brain did not work at all. But afterwards, her notes made so much more sense than mine, and actually so much critical thinking goes into making the art that Lily makes in response to what is happening, even in an area that Lily isn't like a researcher in. And I just remember being really taken by that. So when, so not last year, but the year before, I organised a religion and rape culture conference, and I asked Lily to be sort of an artist in residence for that. And it worked so well. Lily made, using glass and all, well, Lily will be able to tell you better what she used, but Lily made creative responses to all the talks there. And it was just, it's something that everyone at the conference commented on, in terms of like different ways to engage with the research, but also a way of making the day a bit easier and a bit just different ways of engaging with what you're hearing. And I just thought it worked so well that I want to do it with literally everything I do now forever.
I mean, yeah, copy and paste, really. Because with the conference that I went to with Emma, I did the note taking that I do for every event, and she seemed to think that it was interesting. But I had also just seen a artist talk from someone who did conference art, and she approached it in a much different way. She basically did like little courtroom cartoons of people saying what. And I was thinking at the time that I really like academia, but it's never felt like a space for me. And the only way that I can make it feel like a space for me is if I make the space. And that's what those drawings were. That's what that art was. It was making a little space that wasn't text heavy. It was in a sort of responding mode rather than an absorbing mode. And people have really responded to it. So the conference that I did with Emma, where I was the artist in residence, was a big steep learning curve. I made these little glass collages for every speaker, and I had to bring so much material with me to make these things. But they were fascinating because they had to be really abstract. And then I did another conference about sexual violence in the church, and I made lino prints for each speaker, and that nearly did my wrists in. Like, that was just me gouging at a piece of plastic for 8 hours. It was fine, but it hurt. So I think in looking at Buffy, I wanted it to be really visual, because obviously it's got massive visual energy to it. So I thought actually the best thing to do would be to keep it illustrative. So when I was choosing the materials, it was all about mark making and colour, and less collage this time, because I think everyone knows what those characters look like to such an extent that you can just do like white hair and it's Spike.
I think then, we've been talking about it, but let's talk about this grimoire.
I suppose there's something about translating a paper to a speech, to a piece of art, to a piece of paper. There's like a weird metamorphosis happening. I based the cover on a Buffy book. Is there a codex in Buffy? Did quite a lot of research on it, and now I can't remember.
I guarantee Mary has.
Yeah, so the little foils, they're based on that.
That's Mary to have the props, honestly.
I think that was polystyrene that I cut and then sandwiched into vinyl.
Yeah. So this is a version of that. I imagine that the original one, that's not just a prop thing, is more textured. But your version is textured. I don't know how well you can see that.
Amazing. It's so bumpy and it's so cool.
Yeah, there was. I like the idea that it would be in the stacks as well. That it could be part of the texture of the show.
The Giles, coming back to your favourite character, could just pull it out.
Take his glasses off and put them back on and go. The codex.
Let's dive into the text, the volume text. This is the codex, the grimoire, as we've all seen, and this is the lovely context page that you wrote out for us.
So this contents page, so basically, yes, we had this conference a year ago now. We should say it's the anniversary of the conference. Yes. Why we're doing it now. So it was a year ago, 4th of July 2019, and this is the TLDR, I guess, of the last 10 minutes or so, is that Lily was our artist in residence, and the contents page here is, I think, the speakers in order and Lily's sort of creative response to all the talks.
So this is the first image that we have, Buffy the Philistine. Do you want to talk us through how you ended up with this image?
Yeah, read the title out for us. Does that help? Because I've got it here. So just for people who weren't there, this is panel 1, which was called Doppelgangland: Intertextual Doubles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So this is Dr. Sarah Nicholson from the University of Glasgow, and her paper was Buffy the Philistine Slayer: Echoes of Samson in the Buffyverse.
Yeah, there were a couple of images that she brought up during the panel. One of them was the architectural destruction that occurs when Buffy and Spike
Yeah.
So and that got me thinking about structures within both Buffy and the Bible. So I wanted to do it as a church being rebuilt and demolished at the same time. So there's loads of weird architectural things. I think in the upper right, that is Spike and Buffy doing it.
Yes.
And then there's a gallery of bad boyfriends as like saints along the tower. There's Samson with his long hair. There's like workmen carrying big theories up and down, and then like cladding around the bottom of the building, and someone doing heavy lifting. It's actually quite good. Like pillars.
It's amazing. Honestly, this was the first one, and I remember looking at it and going, "Oh my gosh, she was a good investment." Gesturing at Lily. But that gallery of bad boyfriends, I can see, and I could totally see what you mean. Where like the spiky hair and the black t-shirt, you're like, "Oh right, I know exactly who that is." Like the characterization is so good. But yeah, I can see, in the top right, the legs akimbo in the air. Yeah, there's so many details.
Yeah. Oh, but that was a great panel. She talked about how God is hidden in Buffy. God is hidden. There are only fantastic, glamorous goddesses in the form of glory. So I think that's what that shoe is, in reference to her strappy sandals. But I love this paper.
We could look at this. We can look at this for a while. Let's go to the next one. So this is still the same panel. So Doppelgangland.
Yeah, and this is Jenna Gardini, Queen Mary, University of London, The Gift, Saint Lidwina, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
This was a great panel. Oh, there were some really good papers. I wanted to draw this like it's an old-fashioned woodblock print. So that's why all of the lines are really savage. Not savage, jagged. And I think there are some references to the story of Saint Lidwina here. And obviously this is Buffy ice skating in, is it the Gift episode?
Innocence? No, the part 1, part 2 is one with Kendra.
Yeah. And I think what I was trying to imply is that while Saint Lidwina has fallen, Buffy isn't going to save her. They're just in the same space. They're enjoying the same thing. I love the idea that there's a saint out there who loves to ice skate. And I think what was really interesting about this paper was it gave you ideas about how applying Buffy to historic characters who don't have a voice can really help amplify it. I'm fascinated by especially biblical characters who remain voiceless, and if you just transpose something modern onto it that makes sense, you can get so much more insight into their inner life. So I like the idea of them being friends, going ice skating.
I should say Saint Lidwina isn't necessarily a biblical character.
No.
But yeah, I should say Saint. So I love the pieces where you have, because on the left there, that's like tracing paper, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And I just loved how you can like use that to layer different things together, and it just looks completely different. Is there anything more you can say about like how? Yeah, there we go. How and why you do that, and because I think it's really effective.
Well, that was basically a test. I wanted to see if having them in colour would make them feel more modern or more traditional. So I did a copy on tracing paper and added colour in this sort of wash of watercolour. And I deliberately left it in because I can't decide. Like I can't decide which I like best. and I also can't decide whether it makes it look older or newer. I think it looks ancient no matter what. So a lot of the work in this book is kind of not unfinished, but more questions.
So this is the third paper in the Doppelgangland panel. So do you have the full title?
Yes, this is Kate Harvey from the University of Stirling, and it's Bad Girls, Drusilla, Faith, and the Monstrous Feminine. And it's the craft, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful, and I'm really fascinated with this grimoire in that you have your kind of initial notes and then a finished piece, and you can see like the seeds of your finished piece in the kind of the more notes. I just think it's so fascinating. So even that detail with the hair, the red hair, you have that in on the left, and then it's also there on the right. I think that's.
Yeah, and Ruth still has a little anxious face.
Yeah.
I think I love this paper as well. Should I just stop saying that? And I'll just tell you I didn't like one.
Every paper, because they're all great.
They were all great. I think what was interesting about this is that it really made me feel empathy for all of these 4 different similar women, and how they're viewed and how they're used within their narratives. So again, I didn't want to have them as separate entities. I wanted them to be in a gang, the ultimate girl gang, which is a coven. So yeah, the fascinating things about like vanity and lipstick and family and portents. And yeah, Faith has that awful knife that she loves. Ruth has some barley, which I think I asked Kate about to figure out what would be a good symbol for Ruth. Jezebel has her long hair, which looks a bit possessed. And Drusilla has her doll, a terrifying China doll.
Can you remember why barley?
No.
And this is a shout out to tweet us with your take on what you would have Ruth pictured with.
And also, Kate, if you're watching and you remember why barley, please let us know. But yeah, this was fabulous.
I think it's important to reiterate this was all present in the paper. Like, I've interpreted it in a way, but all of that thinking was definitely there already.
Yeah,
I think it's reciprocal. Like, I mean, me and Lily have worked together, like using some of my research, particularly on Dinah, so Genesis 34, and I get just as much out of Lily's response to my research in terms of it helping me to think things through more. So I just think it was a really helpful distinction that Lily made earlier between responding to and absorbing things, and the former being like really helpful. Yeah.
I agree. Okay, let's on to the next one. So this one, I have 2 slides for this paper, but this was a new panel. So do you want to read out our panel title?
Yeah, we put a lot of effort into these panel titles. So this is, panel 2, The Killer in Me: Vampires, Slayers, and Witches. And sorry, this is Francesco Bacci, Buffy: A Journey of Identity, Formation, and Symbolism, from the University of Berlin. I love this one. This is the notes, isn't it, that gets turned into a piece. I think this is one of my top 3.
So the way that Francesco delivered that paper was, it was all about connection, and it was all about one thing growing from another, and it made me think of root systems and sort of natural connectivity and growth. But he also, he spoke in such depth. I feel like these notes are they don't represent that paper at all. Like, it was a spanning thing, and I was only able to catch the sort of visual details that he dropped. But yeah, the seed of the idea that this grew into was all based on that natural imagery referencing that I inferred from his paper.
And then this is some more notes, I think, and then a finished piece, which is just gorgeous.
Yeah, on the left, I don't know if people will be able to see the richness of that blue on the left. And I think there are about 3 different ones, and they're just really stunning. And me and Mary were trying to figure out how you did it. We were like, is this some sort of ink wash? But it's like science, isn't it, Lily?
Yeah, it's real science.
Yeah.
So I used a process called cyanotype printing, where you mix a solution that is photosensitive. And it was used a lot by sort of Victorian photographers to capture botanic imagery. So you would lay a plant on that prepared surface, expose it to sunlight, and you'd get a print of that botanical thing. So I think here you have rosemary and dandelions, and I think the bottom one was a rose. There were some that I put glass on top of to try and catch the light. And the idea was that it would create these symbolic imagery of plant life and root systems and things that were connected, but you're only seeing it in like its reflection. Oh, this was fun.
I love this one. And can you show that middle one again, Mary?
Oh.
And I also had fun because there are a few. I love this one. And the idea of making vampire related art with the sun is absolutely inspired.
Okay, so the next one. So this paper wasn't very good.
Paper was absolutely excellent. And this is It Must Be Witches. And Mary Going, who are in the University of Sheffield.
Whoever that is.
I'm sorry, Mary, you're going to have to talk us through it. And
Yeah.
I'm going to keep saying this is one of my favourite ones, but it absolutely is. I remember looking at these in a near perpetual state of delight when I was like realising what all the different witches symbolised. So clever. What you were saying about like a consistent graphic language, like I love how in this one, as Mary said, you've got these distinct representations of how the witch functions in Buffy, which I'm sure you'll walk us through in a second. But as well as having those distinct representations, they're all doing the same cartwheel, so they're distinct but part of the same process. It's like, what a clever way to like artistically depict that. I just think it's just so great. And it is not lazy, Mary, to split things up into sections. It's really useful and clear for the person who's listening.
I would agree. Oh, this was a lot of fun. I mean, what I'm remembering is that the first image was my notes, and then I went home and I put all of these stickers on it because I wanted there to be a real connection between like nature and one side of witchdom and like pop cultural references, and that was really fun. And I think that's what made me think that image of the cheerleader could be developed on to make a sequence of movements that would highlight all of those different clearly
literal movements. Oh my god, my mind is blown. Both political and physical. Oh my gosh. So Mary, can you like just quickly talk us through the stages of the witch as we see here as represented in Buffy?
Okay, let me see if I can remember. Gosh. So I think I started with I think I was looking at Gingerbread, the episode of Gingerbread, which is, no, was it Gingerbread or was it?
Gingerbread's the third one because it's your little gingerbread
Yeah.
thing that's falling out of the pocket.
I started with the witch because that is an episode where you have a mother and a daughter witch, and the mother is inhabiting the daughter's body. In her heyday, she was a kind of cheerleader and the best, and now she's a woman, and she's very disappointed in her daughter because her daughter's not interested in cheerleading. So she's kind of been like, I'm going to reclaim my youth and be a cheerleader again, live my glory days, which obviously isn't great for the daughter because now she's stuck in her mother's body. So it's that kind of tension there, I guess, in the kind of traditional witch stereotype, which is very much looking at and focusing on youth and glamour, and being glamorous, as things to be attained and to hope for. And I think I connected it to one of my favourite authors, Sid Moore, who writes the Essex Witch Museum series, which is a series of books about witches and Essex girls. But she talks about, that's where I got that glamour thing from. I think it's just really interesting the way that witchcraft and magic and these supernatural female identities are tied up with this idea of glamour. And then obviously you have the glamour model and the Essex girl, which is also so much about that kind of, I guess on the surface, artificiality, but underneath, I think you know, everyone, it's just women. So that was where I started. And then you have the gingerbread narrative, which I guess is the kind of biblical stuff, which has, so there's Hansel and Gretel. I think I was talking about some biblical things. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, which again is taking it back to that kind of the persecution of witches, because they're other, because they're supernatural, but often it's tied, specifically in England, a lot to this kind of gender narrative. So women were persecuted because they were other. And in Gingerbread, Willow is almost burned at the stake because she's a witch, but then so is Buffy. Yeah, because there's something other and something foreign, and it's tied to their kind of identity as women, and that's seen as something dangerous. And then I think my favourite cheerleader is the one at the bottom on the left, which is the Pride cheerleader, which I really love how they do that with Willow, where she, witchcraft becomes a space for her to explore friendship, but also her kind of queer identity. And I really love that. I really love that journey in Buffy. And then, when she gets to university, and then there's that whole Wicca thing, and it's another space for her to kind of explore her identity and female spaces, although it's not exactly the witchcraft stuff that she wanted to do. And then at the end, I kind of finished it on a bit of a not very nice note, but just looking at queer relationships and ideas of consent, which I get a lot from my conversations with Emma, and I think that as much as everyone loves Tara and Willow, we also need to look at them in terms of consent, and that. So I guess that's my paper. Yeah,
I think what you say is really important, like in terms of we often don't talk about how Willow uses a date rape drug on Tara in the musical episode of all episodes. It's just
I still find it uncomfortable to watch and to see.
It's actually awful. It gives Under Your Spell like a whole other as a song, which is beautiful, but actually awful. Like the subtext of it is so violent, manipulative. It's really, really awful. But anyway, I love that paper.
Okay, so then the final paper in that panel. I only have one picture because I don't have time to put more up, but there was
this one.
This is great.
Okay, this is Professor J. Gordon Melton from Baylor University in Texas, and this is Secularizing Vampires in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
This paper was so dense, in a good way. It had so much happening, but the Professor J. Gordon Melton speaks in really concrete ways. He gave lots of very very concrete examples of things, and then references to imagery around them. So that was a real challenge for me as someone interpreting something visually. So I think what I decided to do was to use some of the imagery he was talking about to almost just list all of those really concrete things that he was discussing in his paper.
I think he traced the history of the vampire from stoker and those religious spaces. And I mean, if you look at the bottom of the cross, you've got the Eucharist there, and I think he was talking about those, like you said, concrete things. Like he was talking about religious spaces, religious symbols like the cross, and then those kinds of symbols in religious practices like the Eucharist. That's what I remember.
And interesting things about how vampires and Buffy are afraid of the cross but not afraid of Jesus, and will reference being at on the hill at Grimoire. But yeah, it's interesting that I'm like, it was really concrete, so I made something that is very concrete. Like I made a stone cross because sometimes I'm literal like that. I also did one version that was from behind with James Master's tiny bum.
I remember that.
Yeah, I enjoyed this as well. Okay, next one. So moving on, we have our keynote. So we were very lucky to have Professor Matthew Pateman come and join us.
So this was called Contrary to Popular Mythology, Atheism, Humanism, and the Myth of Religion in Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
His keynote was very, very dense, obviously. With only, you can see I know that in those notes there was lots more writing than there was drawing. And all of the drawing was quite literal. It was just like that character doing that thing. And the kernel that I took out of it was this idea of Joss Whedon as creator, as atheist creator of a biblical landscape. So I decided to redraw the Sistine Chapel, which was hard. Mostly it was hard because Joss Whedon isn't like a caricature. There's no, you can put him in a flannel shirt and give him a beard, but he sort of just looks like any white man. So getting him to look like Joss Whedon was hard. And then he's got his whole set design of people around him, like, and the clapper. And I think the later version, I put Buffy in her kick-ass leather pants instead of this dress. Although that was more representative of who she is.
Yeah, I think it sort of harkens back to some of the stuff that we were saying earlier, like, well, yeah, as Matthew was saying, like the myth of religion, that, yeah, you have this landscape that is saturated with religious imagery, biblical characters and themes, but actually means very little. Like you know that like people, like a vampire in this universe is scared of the cross, but you actually have no concept of what that means and why in the wider landscape of things, which is what I got from the way you interpreted Matthew's talk, which is that, yeah, you have this religious imagery, but it's all set up and it's all superficial and it's all smoke and mirrors, and this is all made out of cardboard at the end of the day. And everything that you see has a massive team behind it.
I really loved both of your kind of final pieces, and I love that you have this kind of Sistine Chapel-like thing, and there's Buffy with her kind of axe and a drink of like soda.
It's a double meat palace.
Yes, yeah. I just think that's great. You have the secular and the sacred together.
I think it came up quite a lot in the conference overall, this idea of world building and how world building isn't a neutral thing. You're making decisions. You're designing whatever injustices are occurring into it. So that does say something about the creator. I think Matthew was a bit was pulled back from that a little bit, but I leaned into it.
Okay, so this is the next panel. So
Hey, I've died twice. Messiahship and Christ figures. So this first one is Emily R. Marlowe from the University of Sheffield, which is Buffy in the Bible? ? Finding Jesus in everything.
This was fun. So Emily created several comparisons to several other Christ-like figures between Buffy and Christ, and sort of a spectrum of Christ-likeness. So there was Captain America, Neo from the Matrix,
Katniss.
Katniss? Katniss is the name. I know pop culture. Katniss from the Hunger Games and oh god, get away from my you. What's her name? Ripley from Alien, and their resurrection stories. So I just drew them as a gang because I like it when people who are apart come together, and that they might be able to have a sort of AA, but for Christ figures, and that Buffy would be the leader because she died twice.
It's like a cooler Avengers.
Yeah, exactly. Like they could take on anyone, right?
Yeah. Next one is I think so this is Naomi Hetherington's talk, University of Sheffield. This is the work that I have to do, love, labour and messiahship in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I absolutely loved this talk.
It was so good. This is the first time that I realised that Slayers don't get paid, and was outraged.
But the Watchers do.
Watchers get back pay if they're.
I'm still in shock that in that moment that Buffy negotiates for Giles to be reinstated with back pay, it still doesn't click that, hold on, I'm the one doing all the lifting. Where's my pay? She's been doing this since she was 15.
She should get some serious coin.
Yeah.
And this idea of like women's work and how it shouldn't be paid and that doing the right thing shouldn't be monetized. Absolutely fascinating. I could talk about this for slightly too long. So in the end, I think because Naomi talked about this image of Buffy with she did tell me what it was.
Hammer and sickle?
It's not a hammer and sickle, but it looks like a hammer and sickle. Okay. It's a particular kind of knife. And I can't remember what kind of knife. But in profile it absolutely looks like a hammer and sickle. So I thought I would look at old USSR posters. And that was fun. I'm now on an internet list, I'm sure.
I think we all are.
So I did a few versions based on different poster designs, and then found one that had used an illustration, some text, and an image. So I found this image in a book about the Crusades. And because I'm an artist and not an academic, I'm allowed to rip up books. So I cut up the picture and put it all together. And it's now Naomi's Twitter handle. That's the best compliment a person can get, I think.
Yeah, and then the last paper in this panel, again, I love this one. There's Eve Hooper from Penguin Random House / Independent Scholar, which was Buffy, Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And what you say about how characters in Buffy have such clear visual codes really comes up in this one.
I love this. Can I just say this is one of my favourite things in the whole thing. I just think it's so fabulous.
It was a lot of fun trying to figure out which Buffy character would correspond to which of the apostles. That was a lot. Oh, man, this was fun. This paper was so interesting, and I can tell because I made very few notes. I think because it was it the last paper of the day?
No.
I might have been waning ever so slightly because I think I was just paying attention. So you've got the Sistine Chapel and the Last Supper.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the next one as well, which is the workshop that was led by Rabbi Leah Jordan, fighting our demons toward a theology of evil in the Torah.
This was good.
It was so good.
I enjoyed this so much.
Ongoing impact on your research, didn't it, Mary? I've seen you.
Yeah, this really made me think. I do a lot of work with Genesis chapter 4, and this was about Genesis was it 4, 7? Or anyway, it was a similar Genesis early chapters. It's just really made me think. And again, like I do 18th and 19th century stuff, but my supernatural stuff, in terms of this, it's something that I'm still working through. really enjoyed this workshop. I think it was just amazing. And she engaged everyone so well, and her questions, and you captured it so well, Lily, that say more. It was just really, really engaging.
I love that, because how often in an academic setting are you encouraged like that? Like, it was people who had like a half thought out thought, just like say more, like get to the root of it, you can do it. So encouraging. And if I hadn't been frantically scribbling at the back, I think I probably would have said more. But it was such a layered discussion in terms of like meaning versus interpretation versus experience versus then like applying it to a different text. It was so juicy, and like you say, just so engaging. She was brilliant. So yeah, it had to be the final piece had to be something that you had to participate in, and something that provoked you, and something that was layered.
Yeah, so this is your kind of notes from the workshop, but we also have, if I can, these two pieces, which are just fabulous. And if I can find it, talk among yourselves for a minute.
So the structure of the workshop was that she translated and discussed a piece from the Torah, and then applied it to a scene in Buffy. So like, when I say layers of meaning, like layers of meaning.
Yeah, it's the thing, you really do need to look at it, and whether Mary has it, because this on the side here, on the right, this is like several different pieces of paper that symbolize all the different layers of the discussion. So you see Mary, that first page has the lines from the Torah in, and then the second page, the lines that we're dealing with from the script, and then the next page, the outcomes of the discussion. It would like the key takeaways. I thought it's such a clever way to do it, because when you look at it all in one, you can see all the material you're dealing with, all the sources, a lot of the questions, and then you just peel it back until you get those outcomes. And we were just like, whoa, like to capture it that way. And as you say, you're forced to engage with the conversation when you look at these, and you have all the information here on the first page, but you have to go through those stages of development to get to the end. And I just thought it was a fantastic workshop and just a fantastic response. As you say, everything that you've done is about responding rather than absorbing, and you're both physically and mentally enabled to do that through this piece, which I thought was amazing.
Okay, next.
Oh my god, my breath was taken by this one. So this is the penultimate panel. So this is the linguists in the house, conversations with dead people, language in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So this talk is Professor Jane Hodson from the University of Sheffield, one of my PhD supervisors. I willed that this Q-tip gets unbendy, the dangerous power of speech acts in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I think this is amazing. I love this one. My breath was taken when I first saw it.
So, I mean, this was I sort of just wanted to focus on the almost on the title of this, because it was so much about speech that I really struggled to find a way to articulate speech visually. So I thought what I would do is I would try and articulate desire, like what you want, rather than sexual desire visually. This is why if I had a pen, I'd explain it better. So I drew Willow in a sort of Renaissance style. I think I referenced a few paintings, just slap shot. That's where the blue blanket comes from. Obviously, there's a little bit of Mary going on there, and Willow just gazing at this this bendy Q-tip. Hopefully, gets across what the paper was about, which was sort of, when you say what you want, you get what you want. Like it was such a good paper, and I'm not doing it justice.
Linguists are so clever. I think language is such a key part of the Buffyverse in terms of obviously language is a key part of everything, but it has such a special place in the Buffyverse in the creation of its own language and the power that language has. So but yeah, I loved this one.
Okay, moving on to the next one.
Oh yeah, while you come and go, I am stuck here in this house of worship. So the master, or as we like to call him, Handsome Harry. Okay, so it says Gosha drew Neok from the University of Lincoln. This is a linguistic analysis of an ancient vampire as biblical creature. Now, I love these illustrations.
I love that you have this picture of Caleb and you've done it as symbols, and you have the apple and then the little girl crossed out and then the cross, which is just such a great representation of that quote that he says about Eve and the apple, and I give woman an apple, what can she do but take it? And it just so perfectly encapsulates his misogyny, that's intertwined with his weird religious misogyny, and again tied up to that kind of biblical idea of Eve. So even just in that one little thing, I love that. And then you have all of his other stuff as well. It's great.
Yeah. Buffy's greatest weapon is her language, and her foes must be linguistically skilled too. Just sort of what we were saying earlier, like language has such a special place in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And how what you were just saying, Mary, about how language is a tool of misogyny, and Buffy turns so much of that on its head in so many ways. But yeah, no, I love this one. I love that illustration of the master on the left, the here endeth the lesson one.
Yeah, with his bloodstained mouth.
Yeah. I think this was so articulate and so finely described that I think the only thing that I could do was fill it with text. And I tried to look at, for me, because the linguistic things were very hard to pick apart, because there wasn't quite a lot of overlap, but because I'm not a linguist, in my head there is. So there was a lot of stuff about sort of archaic language and how that creates a power structure. So I wanted to go with like a Celtic styly illustrated text. I think it works.
Yeah. So the next one in the linguistics panel is Dr. Susan Reichelt, and it is called "They Are Just Sinners, You Are Sin," contrasting the language of good and evil in Buffy the Vampire Slayer's final season. Woo! And this is the one with the eggs.
Yes,
I love the eggs on the presentation slide.
I think this is everyone's favourite because of the eggs.
Yeah. So Lily's captured them in the visual notes there. It's what you were saying, Lily, about how like all the characters are really like visually recognisable because they're features. In the way that Susan used like characterised eggs, and you know exactly who each of them are. It's really
even things like the thing with Spike with a chip and he's got a mic, like a floppy drive in his head. Yeah. Just like could not be improved on. So I think the thinking behind this, like basically that I drew it out in the notes page of wanting to do Garden of Eden imagery, looking at what she was looking at, and then I just did it sort of quite quick and dirty. So that was nice and easy, just looking at who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, and how we talk about those things. But also, if you'll notice in the final image that Buffy is giving Spike an egg, not an apple.
I think that's fabulous. I mean, I think this piece is just so gorgeous. This was such a great paper. Okay, next one.
I think this is the last.
So this is our last panel.
I love this illustration. Okay, so the last panel, which you were very pleased with the naming of, the hardest thing in this world is to live in it, dysfunction and doom. So just two papers in this closing panel. But yeah, sorry, I should read. So this paper is Dr. Steve Janet K. Halfyard from the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire, Birmingham City University, and it's called "Because It's Wrong: The Diabolus in Musica and the Unethical Behaviour in Season 5 and 6 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer." I loved this panel again, is what I'm gonna say. But it was just amazing, all the different things that the speakers brought to all these topics. This was, primarily music, and I thought that the research was just fascinating, and I forgot until we revisited this grimoire how much I loved this illustration that Lily did.
It's gorgeous. Yeah.
It was, I think, sorry. One of the things about the last day was that it was such technical speakers from such different backgrounds. So like going from linguistics to music makes perfect sense. But they're different languages and so technical and so detailed and so interesting. Like this paper was really technical and really about like the minor fifth and I was going to say the major lift because I only know Leonard Cohen, but like the technology of music and how it impacts you and the history of it. So without feeling like I had the confidence to portray all that, we went with Sweet. There's like 2 apologies on these pages. Like, I know Sweet doesn't use the diabolical, but he's a singing demon, so creative license.
I think this paper was saying, the way in which they use the Diabolus in Musica, which is that really jarring cadence that I think from what the speaker was saying is usually used when something like bad is happening, yet the way it's used in Buffy is when like good people are thinking about doing bad things, which was just like, oh my gosh, it was so interesting.
It was really insightful to think about a show that I so many people are really familiar with it, but I think there's so many layers that do have a lot of meaning, and when going back to that creative process and the construction of Buffy that we were talking about in Pateman's paper, that kind of, there's such a level of care that's been put into every single part of the show, and I'm also not really familiar with music, especially on that kind of technical level, but it was just really fascinating to know that this is what it means, this is what these notes mean traditionally in music, but this is what it's doing in Buffy, and it's something different, and that it was just really wonderful to kind of to see that. And yeah, who doesn't love Sweet as well? Like he's fabulous.
It was hard to draw, just for the record.
What is this? Is this felt tip or paint or what?
I think this was paint.
It's amazing. If only you could have captured a way for him to magically change his suit colour. That would have been...
I think the notation might be the Diabolus in Musica, but it might not be.
And it actually worked really well. This paper worked really well with the last paper on the panel and of the conference.
Yeah, it's Dr. Simon Marsden from the University of Liverpool, and it's I Want to See How It Ends, Buffy and the Contemporary Gothic Apocalypse.
And what better way to end a conference than talking about the apocalypse?
But it was so like hopeful and interesting. And I think one of the things that he talked about was how apocalypse means like a resetting, right? Like that, like you're erasing something to begin something, which feels very 2020. And so I created a little machine that would be restarting potentially over and over again.
I really love the way that you have the cogs there, and like you have war, famine, and all of those things, and I would just be fascinated to know what would be on the flag for 2020, because I feel like it would be like so long. All the stuff that's
a series of banners. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was a one that, because when me and Mary opened the grimoire, when we got it in the post, but when we didn't wait to speak to Lily, this was the one that we looked at and went, huh? And then we looked at it closely and we like worked it out, and it was such a satisfying process. And yeah, before we were recording this video, Mary and I were just saying how much we loved this paper in terms of reframing a lot of people's understanding of the apocalypse, not necessarily as the end of the world, but like the end of the world as we know it. Like for one, like, you know, another world is possible after that. So as you say, it's a far more hopeful vision of the end of the world. And yeah, and just the way, I don't even know how you come up with this stuff, Lily. Like,
Yeah,
so you just captured this never-ending circle cog of, you know, one world, one apocalypse after the other, and things are different. And, you know, into every generation a slayer is born and a new apocalypse comes with it, sort of thing. I just absolutely loved it. In that in the font is so reminiscent of those like oldie worldy maps as well, and this, like, to me, like that, like Voyager and the moon is like, all of that imagery is really reminiscent to me of those like old adventure maps, then like clashed with this like more steampunk thing. I just really loved it.
I wanted it to be steampunky without being gross.
It's a hard line to
I think I wanted it to be, because this paper was about the light side of, well, not the light side, the hope, that I wanted to convey danger but without scaring. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that one. The whole book's pretty good.
That is amazing.
And the amount of, I should say, like, what we've shown isn't like half of the stuff that Lily did for this. There are so many other pages of notes, and although we've tried to show the development of some of these pieces, there's pages more behind some of them.
Well, I loved making this work and listening to these incredible speakers, because I was a fan of Buffy as a young thing, so to be able to think of it in any kind of critical way was amazing. Thank you for letting me be involved.
Oh my god, thank you.
Honestly, thank you, because, you know, there's two sides of it. Like, on the actual day, I think you brought so much, you know, having you be there and respond in real time with your creative notes. I think I found it really, you know, engaging, and, you know, seeing you there and watching you and that kind of thing. So I think a lot of people share that, that were there. They've said that, you know, it was really great to kind of talk to you, to see you working, and to talk to you about your work. And then also thank you for the grimoire as well, because it is, you know, it's beautiful. So obviously we had planned to do something with the grimoire earlier than this, and for many reasons, you know, we were looking into various avenues, and then industrial action happened, and then illness
support, obviously,
and then more industrial action. Yeah, we definitely support the strikes, and then obviously now a pandemic. So it has taken us a whole year to be able to share some parts of this grimoire with everyone, but we will hopefully be doing more with the images in terms of getting them up online. So this is just the kind of, as Emma said, we have lots more, there's lots more stuff in this book, and we want to share everything with everyone. And in the meantime, so I think I mentioned at the start of this video that we have the Sheffield Gothic website, and we have obviously all of our Buffy stuff on there before. So this is our old conference schedule. So if you want to have a look at the papers and the titles, you can find that all, the Buffy and the Bible Binder schedule, which you can find on our website. So that's sheffieldgothic.home.blog, with our beautiful logo, which was designed by Holly Dann. So shout out to Holly, who designed that amazingly. And the other thing that I wanted to share is which I mentioned at the start, our Buffy the Vampire blog series, which I curated for the 20th anniversary of the show, which actually seems like it was years ago now, but it has 20 posts, and there's various posts for each season of Buffy. So you can find our entire series, again, Buffy the Vampire blog series, which is under all of our blogs. And in the meantime, if anyone wants to do another blog, whether it be about Buffy or religion or creative practices or anything Gothic, then get in touch, because we're always looking for blog posts. So in the meantime, that's something, if you want to get engaged with, then you can just contact Sheffield Gothic at Sheffield Gothic, or me at Madsgoing on Twitter, or you can find all the information on here. So I think, yeah, that's where we are with the afterlives. We're kind of still working out exactly what to do with the grimoire, because it is, it is such an amazing piece of art, and it captures what I think, was a really amazing experience for us as organisers. And I think, we were blown away with the feedback that we got. And we do want to keep that conversation going, and the grimoire is a really important and central part of that. So watch this space, and stay in touch. Yeah,
we've continued to have, even in the last few weeks, messages from people who were there saying how much they enjoyed it and like what a lovely memory it is, which is just really, really, really nice, especially at the minute. And I also wanted just a quick shout out to everyone who did research posters on the day as well. There were some really fantastic research posters, and maybe if we can find a way to put them on the blog as well. There's some really excellent stuff. And you can look, if you're on Twitter, #BiblicalBuffy. And you can see some of the live tweets from the day still, if you want to have a look. So yeah, I think to wrap up, Dr. Sarah Nicholson, who did our first paper from the University of Glasgow, on the day, you might recognise this. This is what she tweeted. "I've been having a good day. Don't want to put my pen away. I'm asking you, please no. It isn't right, it isn't fair. Biblical Buffy ended there. There's nothing like this anywhere. I just don't want to go. The papers were beyond compare. I'm devastated, don't you care? But I'm still wearing underwear." Which obviously, in the tune of the song from Once More With Feeling. So what a better way
sung by the lovely Marty Noxon.
Yeah. Right, well, yeah, I think that's everything. But it's been so much fun. And thank you so much, Mary. Obviously, you're always great at everything that you do. From co-organising to doing the paper to, we had to, Mary had to do a daring rescue of the grimoire from the university, which is currently locked down because of the pandemic. So it was a real adventure.
It's just another adventure. And thank you both for joining me today, and letting us all ramble about Buffy again. But honestly, it's been so great. I love working with you, Emma, and Lily. Please always come back and do creative responses on everything I do, because you are just so wonderful.
Hiya, Lily, if you're listening.
Yes. Yes.
Find you. Not physically, but where could people reach out to you, like email or Twitter?
At Terracotta Lily. You have to learn how to spell terracotta on any socials. And hello@terracottalily.co.uk if you wanted to email.
Awesome. And at EJ Nagouse on Twitter, and at Mazgoin, but we'll try and find a way to write that down, because I've got an accent that people won't be able to.
I'll put the link.
Yeah,
link will be in the description box below. So yeah, don't worry if you missed any of that. They'll be written down for you. And okay, so I'll say thank you again one last time to Emma and Lily, and thank you for watching. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion, our conversation, and looking at the amazing art. And yeah, watch this space, because an end is just another beginning.